You're watching ChillyBoy Productions. I'm Larry ChillyBoy Chilson, and this is my review for The Iron Claw. Now, before we get into this review, make sure to go ahead and click that subscribe button down below so that you can chill with me on each and every one of my latest videos. The Iron Claw is a 2023 sports thriller that follows the true story of the inseparable Von Erich brothers who make history in the intensely competitive world of professional wrestling in the early 1980s. Through tragedy and triumph, under the shadow of their domineering father and coach, the brothers seek larger than life immortality on the biggest stage in sports. The film is directed by Sean Durkin and stars Zac Efron, Harris Dickinson, Jeremy Allen White, Holt McCallney, Mara Tierney, Stanley Simmons, and Lily James. So growing up, I was into what was then the WWF, now WWE. Back in the late 90s, I was all about watching pro wrestling. Now, I haven't stayed up to date. I kind of fell off the track and haven't kept up, but anytime something about pro wrestling gets brought to the forefront of culture, it takes me back to my childhood. But in saying that, I wasn't really familiar with the story of the Von Erich family. I had just heard that it was a tragic tale overall and that it was emotional. So thankfully, I knew what to expect on that front heading into the movie theater. And overall, it is exactly that. It is an emotional story that is full of heart, it's earnestly told, and delivers a really strong, true story biopic. So let's go ahead and kick things off with the positives first. Well, my first and biggest positive actually is our acting class because I believe they are actually top notch, top to bottom. There's not a bad performance among the bunch. And it's all led with Zac Efron in the leading role, who gives a career defining performance. I know that's kind of a buzzword phrase of the moment, but it really fits here. Now, I do believe Zac Efron actually has given several really, really good performances throughout his career, but this just takes it to another level. The physicality required for this role, obviously, is insane to witness. But the emotional subtlety and depth he's able to bring through this character as he goes through so much in his life is commendable. What a stellar turn for Efron. I thought Harris Dickinson was once again great. I honestly think Harris Dickinson is a little bit underrated because he's great in everything I've seen him in. Well, maybe not Maleficent 2. That was a little iffy. But everything else, I thought he's been fantastic in. And once again, he shines here as Efron's younger brother. Jeremy Allen White has the perfect attitude and delivers some really scene-stealing rawness to his portrayal. Lily James has a smaller role, but much like I said with Harris Dickinson, Lily James always delivers, and she does so once again. And then we have Holt McCallney, who plays their overbearing father, and wow, he was kind of made for a role like this, and he knocks it out of the park. As does Mara Tierney, who plays their mother, a really kind of low key role. She doesn't have a whole lot to do in honesty, but wow, whenever she's on screen, she has this presence to her, whether it's sadness or overall just struggle. Her character says so much with so few lines of dialogue. But I really enjoyed the script as well. What this screenplay does so well is establish this family, establish this bond between these brothers, establish the dynamic between the brothers and their parents, define Zac Efron's Kevin among the family dynamic so that when we get into the second and really when we get into the third act of this film, all of the emotional payoff really hits and it hits authentically. So the screenplay is really well rounded as it builds up these characters so that it has that intended effect by the end. And particularly that dynamic between the father and his sons is handled quite subtly. It's not an over the top, in your face type of emotional abuse or physical abuse, masculinity being toxic type of portrayal. It just slowly seeps itself throughout the entirety of the film. And so the audience just kind of feels it overbearing on them without the script having to like yell it from the rooftops. It's done really, really well. I thought the wrestling matches were also a lot of fun and provided some levity to the situation as a sports movie. And the direction was also very nice. It was a well-crafted film, pretty much from top to bottom, and one that leaves quite the impact after watching. So then, what doesn't work so well when it comes to the Iron Claw? Well, my biggest issue with the Iron Claw is actually the hair and makeup teams. I'm sorry, I know they're hard workers, but well, what were we doing here with this hair and makeup? Since watching the film, I've kind of looked into the family more and really read up more on the true story that this is depicting. And I've seen pictures. The hair did not have to look like it looked in this movie, y'all. The wigs on each and every one of these brothers was so distracting that it was hard sometimes. Thankfully, the performances were good enough, but it was hard to move past the distracting wig and makeup jobs to get to the heart of the performances. Really, particularly those wigs were really bad. And that leads me to Ric Flair in this movie. Speaking of bad wigs, Ric Flair's actual hair was, not great back in the day either. But, ooh, he's the wrestler I was familiar with. And I don't know. It was also distracting. Just the whole portrayal of Ric Flair to me in this film was a bit distracting. He seems like he should be a pretty easy persona because he's so over the top to imitate. Never quite felt right here. And I found it very strange upon looking into the actual story. One of the brothers is just erased from the film altogether. Now, if they were doing a story kind of loosely based on the family or something, that wouldn't be any sort of deal for me. But when you're telling an actual family tragic story, I don't know. I feel some kind of way about just completely ignoring one of the brothers in the family. And I saw that the director said it was based on time. This film is 2 hours and 12 minutes. It never feels very long. I think they could have added an extra 10 minutes or so to acknowledge that there was another brother in this tragic story. I mean, they take a lot of liberties in general with the actual families of these people, the timeline of it all. We do a lot of jumping. We don't acknowledge any families outside of Zac Efron's Kevin. We don't acknowledge like any marriages, any relationships, any kids outside of Kevin's specific relationship and kids. So they already cut so many other people, and we do a lot of jumps in the timeline. I find it strange. I just can't quite get over finding out that there was another brother in this family that they just erased from the film. But overall, The Iron Claw is a film that really hits hard by the end of it. As you're sitting through that first act, maybe act and a half, I do think maybe you're kind of like, okay, this is solid, but I don't know what the big deal is. But as you get into the emotional core of this story, you start to see all of the big payoffs that that first act laid the groundwork for. And when you get to the conclusion, sitting in your seat after the credits start rolling, it all just really hits you. What an impactful film you just watched. So if you're a wrestling fan, I think The Iron Claw is a must see. If you're somebody who's into just like true stories, I also think this is a must see. And as we move into award season, I think you got to check out The Iron Claw. So if it's opening at a theater near you on December 22nd, I definitely recommend heading out to your theater and watching The Iron Claw. You might be pleasantly surprised with this one, but make sure you bring some tissues into the theater with you. So that is my review for The Iron Claw. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead, click like down below and subscribe to the channel so that you are always up to date on all of my latest videos. Also, join in on the discussion. Are you excited to see the Iron Claw? Or have you had the opportunity to check it out? Let me know either in the comment section down below, or you can hit me up on Twitter. I love you all so much for your continued support. Mwah! Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.